Greetings. Today I'm going to start a mini series here on my channel for you tarot readers who have expressed to me that you're interested in hearing about my experiences with Lenormand cards and whether I read Lenormand cards and what I think of Lenormand cards and how I use them, etc. Some of you might not even know what we're talking about, so this might be something new for you to check out if you don't know. Um, I thought a long time before doing these videos for Lenormand because I'm not, you wouldn't call me a Lenormand expert. I do have Lenormand decks. I have 4 or 5 decks. I'm not sure how many I have. I think I have about 4 or 5 decks. And I don't use them real often, but I do use them. I really enjoy using them in combination with my tarot cards. And I've been doing so, for quite a few years. I want to say 6 or 7 or 8 years, something like that. I've been using them in combination, which I enjoy. And I have, some of you may have had readings using that combination. But for reading purposes, mostly I am tarot, and I consider myself to be very knowledgeable in the tarot. Um, I'm not as knowledgeable in Lenormand, but I do have great research skills, and I do have um, good insight as to who on here on YouTube are people that have a lot of insight that I trust on Lenormand cards. So I'm going to share 2 of those with you today. 2 people, if you're really serious about learning Lenormand, really serious, beyond what I can share with you, or just to enhance what I share with you, I suggest you check out both Kelly, A Truth and Story, or Donna Lay, her name is, who I consider her pretty much the go-to expert on all things Lenormand. And her channel here on YouTube is Tarot Tribe Beyond Worlds. And I'll put a link to both these channels below. A lot of the information I'm going to be sharing with you is information I've received from my education from these 2 ladies. They're really knowledgeable. They've um, they have a lot of common sense to give you concerning the cards. And what's interesting, their approaches are somewhat different, which one might appeal to you more than the other. So that's maybe why I think it's a good choice for me to recommend those 2 to you. I'm going to structure this series, it's just a mini series on Lenormand into it's probably going to be 3 weeks, possibly longer, but I don't think so, at least initially. We'll see where it leads us, but I'm going to do this week. I hope to have another video. This will be part 1 today. I hope to have part 2 to follow, maybe tomorrow, because they kind of go together. They're an introduction. And then maybe 2 more videos over the course of the next 2 weeks. Just adding on a little bit of, making the Lenormand challenge a little bit longer. I have been contemplating for some time whether I want to teach Lenormand classes. We'll see what kind of response that I get to this series that will determine that. Okay, but I thought at least for right now it's a little departure, not departure, but just a little turn in the path on our divination challenges with the tarot, reading the tarot. This is just a whole another system. And that brings me to the first question that we want to ask is, why should we even learn Lenormand? Why should we even learn to read Lenormand when we do have so many other card divination forms available to us? Well, we have many more than we think, than we even know of. I can think of 2 more easy that we know of, other than the ones I'm going to be naming today, which we won't get into really today. But first of all, the tarot, you know my love for tarot, and what do I love so much? Here I am with my beloved Hoi Polloi deck, And I love this deck so much. I love it, just has been with me my entire adult life. Um, I love the images. I love the colors. You know, I've told you, I've shared with you in the past that I love the smells. Every once in a while I get a little whiff of college, I think, from handling the cards. They're very well worn and loved, and they mean a lot to me. But when I've enjoyed a lot looking at other tarot decks since my devotion to this was so strong, and it was hard for me to leave it, to even look for a moment. But what I've learned from looking at other decks are, visually at least, they're just a fountain of knowledge for us. They offer us a just a almost unlimited pool of information to pull on for readings, especially those who are beautifully illustrated or really stick to a theme of some kind that really makes sense. It's not like a silly theme like maybe bunnies might be. I don't mean to pick on bunnies, but you know what I mean. You can't get much knowledge out of a card that's just being trying to be cute. But you know how I feel about the Wildwood Tarot and about the um what else do I read? The Now I'm reading the Shadowland Tarot, the uh Druid Craft I love so much, and I love, you know, Deviant Moon. There's a lot of decks that I'm really very fond of that just give me new insight onto the meanings of the cards. Okay. The thing about tarot is when you're learning to read tarot, you're really basically choosing from one of three basic systems of tarot. Of course, I usually follow the Rider-Waite system, which is the 22 majors, the 78 deck card deck, the 22 majors, and the 56 minor arcana cards with the suits, following the suits and the elements. I read really strongly in those. I love them. A lot of people like the Marseille system with the pip cards, and there's other people that like the Thoth deck system. But basically, most tarot readers stick to really one kind of system for their favorite. But there's a lot. But there's long traditions. There's a lot of there's we understand the system. Once you learn to read the system, you're good with anything. But um there's just a vast amount of possibilities for you when you read. Okay. Now some people read what we call oracle cards, and here I have my Druid animal oracle deck, which I really love. Here's the owl. It's such beautiful illustrations. And here's the air dragon. And I use these two in conjunction with here's the hind and the salmon. Okay. I use these cards in conjunction with a tarot reading often. I don't normally read these in a spread. I usually read these one card at a time. Where the tarot cards, I could read one card at a time, but I think it's more effective the more cards you add. And it's the relationship between the cards and how there's so many different things of expression, ways of expression given to you in any reading that you're really there's so much given here in the oracle cards. Each card gives you an information. It's like almost like meditating with a card. Okay. When we read a Lenormand deck, it is a whole entirely new system. It is not just something like it is not a simplified tarot system. It is not an oracle card system, other than the fact that all of these cards are realistically, they are oracle cards. They're all used for some kind of divination, giving us some insight, right? Some kind of insight. So there technically are oracle cards. But when I'm talking about oracle cards here, I'm talking about, these decks, these theme decks. They usually follow some kind of a theme. And every one of these oracle decks is different from every other one. If I learn to read Rider-Waite version cards, styled cards, who are sort of fashioned on the Rider-Waite system, I can pretty much read any deck of cards when I get it, um, using this system that I've learned. Okay, And in my classes, we do use a Rider-Waite based system to learn. And I ask everybody to have a deck that is Rider-Waite based so we can, because these are the images, like some kind of a Rider-Waite deck to begin with, because these are the images that we're going to be speaking about, the images that we see on these versions. Okay. And there's many, many, many variations that are still Rider-Waite Smith cards. Okay. So that's fine. And then, but later in the classes, but by the time we get into after several weeks, I'm bringing in all kinds of decks because I want people to get used to seeing different decks and seeing the layers, the many layers that we get of meaning from using different decks. Okay, what happens when we look at the history with the Druid craft, those kind of ancient memory kind of things? What happens when we look into shadow work with Shadowland or something like that? How does that change the information given in the card? Okay, but we can basically just go from any deck. When we're talking about oracle decks, they're very theme based. Okay, and they have no system. Each We don't know how many cards there are on the deck. It could be any number of cards. You can't transfer what you learned from doing the Druid Animal Oracle to learn to what other kind of angels. I have one angel oracle or something. I've got other oracle cards. I can't remember what they are because I don't use them terribly often. I use them like I said, a card at a time, basically a card at a time, and it doesn't translate. So every time I use the deck, for the most part, I'm looking in the book. I pull a card and I'm looking in the book to tell me what the author has in mind for each card. Okay. Now I can add a little bit of meaning to that, but other than that, the knowledge I have on this oracle deck is not going to really help me in another oracle deck. The way knowing knowledge in a tarot deck helps you. So in that way, those are extremely different. So in that way, we go into a Lenormand deck. And there are many kinds of Lenormand decks, but Lenormand system, the Petite Lenormand, which is what we're talking about, that has 36. It has 36 cards in the deck, period. It has 36 cards. Every deck in the Petite Lenormand system has 36 cards. And every one is numbered. They're numbered. And pretty much all of them are similarly named. The images are not necessarily the same. And the meaning might vary a little bit, but basically they're really the same. So I can get a Mystic Lenormand deck, which is what I have here, and simplified. And I'll give you a closer look of these simplified images. I'm sorry, it's because I'm backwards. I think I'm backwards. I'm not sure. And these are very slippery cards. Okay. But anyway, the images are very simple. There's not a lot to see on the picture. And that's because they're not meant to be read that way. They're not meant to be read at all like a tarot card. Okay, so here's the Mystic Lenormand I have out here. I have Under the Roses Lenormand, which has a beautiful back. But again, it's very, very simple. Very simple. There's a dog. Nothing there but a dog. Nothing there. Dog's not even really doing much. He's got a flower in his teeth, but then it's just a dog. It's just a dog, okay? So they're really different. But these are meant as a very specific system, numbered from 1 to 36. Each card has a number on it, and each card is named or has an image of a thing that is the same in every Lenormand deck, Petite Lenormand. Number 1 is pretty much going to be a rider, a person on a horse. Okay. Number 2, every Lenormand deck is going to show a clover, some kind of clover, picture of a clover, or it's going to show where I try to move those. Here's one. Here's the Fairy Lenormand. Shows a whole bunch of clovers. But it's clover. That's really all. There's a person in the sleeping in the clover, but that doesn't have anything to do with it. Okay, it's stylized to the theme of the deck, but it's really just the clover. And that's because each one of these cards has specific meaning. And it varies maybe a little bit per chance. If you're doing most of these decks, I believe, are of the German or the French tradition, but it just maybe a couple of the cards in the deck maybe have the meaning is just slightly different, maybe, or and maybe they might be called something a little different sometimes. But it's basic, like for instance, I don't know if I can think of one. Oh, the birds. The number 12 is birds or the owls. It's in some decks it's owls, in some decks it's birds, but it means pretty much it means the same thing pretty much no matter what you look at. If it's other kind of birds or it's owls, specifically owls. Okay. So in that way, you can read, you can use stylized visualization. So there's another opportunity for you to collect all these crazy decks. Just if you like to collect decks, this is a really good time. Okay. But the Lenormand cards are different from both the Oracle cards and the Tarot cards in really one really important way. And that is that a tarot card, you can pull a single card. Some people pull a single card for the day, and that's what they think of. Okay, today is the magician. Today is the magician, and I can say from my daily reading, this is my card. Oh, today I'm going to have, I'm going to need to do maybe some work, maybe, but I have my tools. I'm prepared. It might be a little effort for me today, but I'm well prepared, and I just need to use the tools that I have on hand to address whatever happens for me. Maybe that's something that is my theme for the day, my forecast for the day, my the oracle for my day. Okay, I can pull a Wren out of an oracle deck, and that Wren is going to give me the booklet. Is going to give me a couple paragraphs about the sentiment that goes along with this Wren and what that's going to mean for me today. Okay, when I'm pulling a deck, when I'm pulling a card out of the Lenormand deck, here I have a deck. I'm going to have to change my camera because this is really bad. But this card is clouds, okay? And there's some kind of a confusion or misunderstanding when you see clouds. What? Confusion or misunderstanding? What kind of a confusion? What kind of misunderstanding? I'm confused. I don't get it. What's going to happen? I don't know where. I don't have any. Give me some clues. Give me some clues. I don't have any clues. I don't have any clues. These are just clouds. They're just clouds. That's not going to help me. That's making more clouds for me. You see that? Lenormand, you cannot read on its own. You don't read it on its own. Okay? You can, but it just doesn't give you any kind of a message at all. It doesn't give you any kind of information. The magic of Lenormand is they're read in groups, not in big groups like a tarot spread, but they're read in small groups, like maybe 2 cards together or 3 cards together, making. And I'll show you. We're going to talk a little bit about more of that in part 2 tomorrow. But that's the trick about it. But it's very simplified. It's a simplified meeting. Okay, which we'll go into a little bit more. Kelly at Truth and Story has a lovely way of putting this. When she's saying the difference between a tarot deck, an oracle deck, and a Lenormand deck, she says that they offer different voices. Why do you need them? Because it's just another voice. It's another voice. Where you might go to an oracle deck like this, it's like contacting maybe a sage or some kind of a wise person, or get some kind of an affirmation message or something like that. Okay, some healing thing. When you're contacting a tarot deck, when you contact, you're doing a tarot reading. This is a counselor, tarot readings. I have, you can imagine when you get a tarot reading from me that I have something to say about your life. And I try not to, but it's hard. But that's really what I think I'm advising you of something. I'm being like an advisor to you in a way. I'm telling you what the cards, I'm interpreting the cards to you and telling you what kind of difference it's going to make in your life from what I see on the table. Okay. I might see positive things. I might see negative things. Okay. When I'm reading a Lenormand, according to Kelly, this is like asking your best friend for some advice. This is like asking, this is like going to your aunt and saying, what should I do? What should I do about this? And your aunt's going to tell you simply, this is what you need to do. This is what it is, telling you just like it is. Your friend's going to tell you you look fat in a dress, right? Your aunt's going to tell you, you know, something you need to know, something you need to know, but just simple advice, simple advice. Okay. The good news is these cards work really well together. Like I've already said that in the beginning, they work really well together. But they offer a different thing. And I know some of my clients, for instance, would be very happy to know that while I don't like to give yes or no answers from tarot cards, I just don't think tarot cards give you black and white yes and no answers. And I know there's a lot of people making a lot of money today with providing yes and no answers from tarot cards, and I don't see that. I can see positive negatives, I can see potentials or warnings, those kind of things, but I don't see black and white yes and no's. The Norman cards are pretty much, you know, it's either a positive card. All cards are either a positive card or they're a negative card or they're a neutral card. They all address either something that's bringing something good towards you or telling you there's a warning and maybe or something's going to stop. And Donna Lay on her channel talks about it's like going through life in a car. If you just went constantly, you have to choose. You're either hitting the gas. You can't just not do anything, or you're sitting there. So you push on the gas pedal and you go forward, the accelerator, and you go. But if you don't ever use your brake pedal, you're in trouble. You're in trouble, right? I'm in real big trouble if I get down here. I follow the canyon road down to Laguna Beach. If I can go down the canyon road right from my house, get down there. If I don't use the brakes, I'm gonna hit. I hit Pacific Coast Highway. I hit it, and if I keep going, I'm swimming. Right? I'm gonna be swimming. You got to put on the brakes sometimes. Some things have to slow you down. Sometimes you have to stop, and that's what the brakes are. But these cards will actually tell you no, this doesn't look like it's going to happen right now for you. Okay. So some people who really want that yes, no kind of thing, Lenormand might be your ticket. Okay. Now, what I want to tell you again, one more thing I want to say to you is, before we get into actual reading, which we're going to do in part two, that's why I want to say in part two, which is probably tomorrow, we're going to be talking about what the cards mean and how you read them. Okay. And then we're going to get into the following weeks, we're going to get into actually doing some readings of the cards. Okay. But I just want to say before we get into that, I thought it was important to, at least give you a little bit of background here, some foundation for this reading. A difference between tarot and Lenormand. This is so important especially for tarot readers, who already read tarot. Tarot is visual. Tarot is visual. We love to put out our spreads. I love it. I just did a reading for somebody, I've done about 3 or 4. My last readings that I've done were just putting out 9 cards, 333, putting them out and looking at them. I didn't have any questions before I start. I just look at these cards and I start to see the relationships between the cards. How are the cards? What is the overall picture the cards are giving me? How do they relate? How many major arcana do I have? How many minor? What is the focal card in the middle? What, what is touching it? What are the anchors or the four legs, the feet on the ground around on the outside? I look at these kind of things and I look at the relationships in the cards. And I'm able to do wonderful readings. I think I'm really able to get really, really good readings from those. But I'm not asking any questions to begin with. I'm looking, I'm studying. From the very beginning of my tarot classes, when we're doing 3 card readings, we start reading at the very class 1 we start. And I say, put down 3 cards. Put down 3 cards and look at them. And think about how they relate to each other and walk away from it, and come back and look again. Leave that card out. We tell people all the time the reason that we pull 1 card every day, those of us who take daily draws of 1 card. I used to for a long time. I don't normally do that too often now, but I did for years and years. In the last couple of years, I did very often. And I contemplate all day on this card. How does this card, I come back to it the next day or the day's end, and I say, how was the Empress present in my, yeah, how was the Empress present in my day today? And then it gives me a whole new insight on that Empress card, okay? So it's a very visual exercise, reading tarot. Very visual. The people who, some of my most cherished people here on YouTube have 400, 500 decks of tarot cards. I mean, these people are on visual overload. I mean, they love looking at the pictures or they would not have that many cards. I mean, it's crazy, right? So tarot is very much visual. Lenormand is verbal. Lenormand is verbal. There's not really anything exciting. And let me find a picture. There's the bear. Well, he's a little happy because he has a fish in his mouth. But other than that, what? How long are you going to look at this picture? You're not going to spend a lot of time looking at this picture. But I bet you if I picked up a card, I bet you if I picked up a bear card in this deck, you might spend more time looking at it. Well, I don't know if it's true, but I do know this card is the most adorable. You know what that is. It's a Highland cow. Oh, the little coo is so cute. We actually met these cows when we were in Scotland. And my husband nearly cried. He got a chance to pet them and feed them. And it was so cute. They were so cute and fluffy with their little bangs. Anyway, but even this card doesn't give you a whole lot. But it's the when you start looking at the tarot cards and how they relate to each other and how they're what the visual experience is where the money is, right? But Lenormand isn't like that. Lenormand is straightforward. And we're going to see that tomorrow. Straightforward. Okay? And the trick to reading Lenormand is each of these cards represents a word or just a couple words only. Like this card, a rider, is a message. For instance, it's a message. What kind of a message? It's a good message. It's a message which gives about you maybe want something, or you maybe, you're some kind of a message. You got a really good email, a happy email or something like that. Okay, so that's it. That's it. 2 cards. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Okay. Again, Donna Lay says, this is a quote from Donna Lay, that context is everything in Lenormand. Okay. The daily draws that you have before mean nothing without what the context of the question is too. The question is so important. And you see, when I did my 9-card tarot reading, I didn't have any questions. Well, we might have some questions. Like, the querent usually says, well, I'm looking for areas of, my husband's job or my children, getting along better or something like that. Those kind of things are plaguing me. And I like a little advice if there's any information there about that. But other than that, I'm just looking for, basic stuff, whatever. They might not have any questions at all. Some people go, I want my cards read, but I just don't know what to ask. Well, you don't need to. The cards will tell you. But you do need to ask a question with Lenormand. You absolutely have to ask a question. And you have to be very, very specific in your question. And we'll go into that later when we get into reading the cards. Okay. All right. I think I've talked a long time. I hope not. But it's going to all come together. It's going to make sense. And it's really going to be fun. And I think at least if you're not really interested in Lenormand, you might want to stay tuned for the next uh, episode, the part two anyway, because when we talk about the meanings of the cards in Lenormand, because later on we're going to do something else that is not reading the cards that is going to have something to do with those card meanings. So if you're of the mind, you might want to pay attention and maybe pay attention to, you know, having a list of what the cards mean. And you'll know that later. I don't want to go into it now. But you might not be interested in the cards or acquiring the cards, but something else that we're going to be doing later on may be of interest to you. So it'll give you a little information. So watch the next one. Then if you don't want to read them, don't come back. Okay. All right, that's all. That's all I had to say. And hopefully see a lot of you tomorrow. Okay. Thanks for watching. I'm Rebecca. Like always, I wish you blessings.